I'm Nick Hernandez, and you're listening to the Positivity Matters podcast. We talk about well being research, well being being lived in the world. Today, I'm excited to have Amy Goodburn as a guest on the show. She is the Senior Associate Vice Chancellor and Dean of Undergraduate Education. Amy, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Nick. Happy to be here.
I was delighted to find a well being definition popping up on the UNL website in several places. And I get excited about all things well being. So the connector strength in me loves Google. And then I come to discover 20 associations are involved in the creation of this thing. And um, that excites me to no end. So that the definition was we define well-being as an optimal and dynamic state that allows people to achieve their full potential.
Mhm.
Not only is that at play, but you have created a beautiful acronym for some core elements of well-being that could not be more appropriate for UNL, and it is power. I'll stop talking and let you introduce you and maybe the story up to the creation of this acronym.
Sure. Yeah. Well, thank you. So sure. In my role as a senior associate vice chancellor, I oversee 12 units that focus on student success that are designed to support all undergraduates at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. And the Power framework really came out of conversations and research about what environment do we need to create at the university to support our students thriving and to support their degree completion. As a university, we're trying to increase the number of students who graduate, but not just increase those numbers, but increase the types of transformative experiences that they have while they're at the university so that they can flourish in their careers and in their communities once they graduate. And so the Power framework really started by just writing down some words that we were focusing on, that we were learning about in the research. What helps students be successful? And POWER is an acronym that stands for purpose, ownership, well-being, engagement, and relationships. And through our research, we found that those are really the five elements that if students dive into or lean into those types of elements and are self-reflective about their engagement with those elements, that they will be successful at the university. It also helps that at UNL, we have sort of an athletic culture that uses power at the football stadium on Saturdays, where one side of the stadium yells Husker and the other side of the stadium yells Power. And so we were kind of riffing on that athletic connotation, but trying to universalize it for all of our students. And so we called it the Husker Student Power Framework.
I love it. Thank you, muses, for bringing this into existence. Going way back,
Mhm.
please share a little bit about Genoa, what that means for Nebraska, for the country.
Oh yeah, yeah. So the Genoa Indian School was an off-reservation boarding school in Genoa, Nebraska, from 1884 to 1934. And as I think people are becoming much more aware of the legacy of uh, the boarding school movement in the United States and in other countries that took native children from their families and with the sole goal of sort of colonizing, making them, they kill the Indian and create the white person inside them. So it was very much a colonistic endeavor, imperialistic endeavor designed to rob students of their cultures. They couldn't speak their language. They were forced into labor in order to sustain themselves and the community. And many times they were taken from their families for years. And so when students returned to their families, they could no longer speak the language and could no longer communicate with their parents and their ancestors. Um, so I've been studying the Genoa Indian School through the lens of literacy and looking at in the archives, I looked at some of the writing that students did through a school newspaper, through a monthly literary magazine that they created, and looking and really trying to understand how they were able to use literacy, English literacy, in order to also distance themselves from that colonial project and retain their sense of identity. And I sort of trace different examples of that through their writing, but even up to the more contemporary times, there were interviews with former students who attended the Genoa Industrial Indian School, and then also uh, people who lived in the town of Genoa at the time and where friendships developed. And so I've looked at a letter writing exchange between one of the former students and one of his boyhood friends and how they sort of told and retold stories from multiple perspectives based on their lived experiences. So um, that was a wonderful opportunity for me to use my expertise in English and composition to sort of really understand literacy practices at a particular moment in time and really understand the impact that those practices have up to the present day.
We were talking a little bit before the podcast started, audience,
Mhm.
and looking at what I was sort of thinking of as channels of kindness, like maybe the river of kindness overall. There's channels in it. And I think one of them is a playful kind of kindness. Another would be the compassionate kind of kindness. And then there's the generative kind, like in friendship, it would be bringing out the best in each other. In
Mhm.
a
Mhm.
mentoring relationship, there's this sharing, sometimes identifying strengths and even thinking about like a our best self, and the mentor is one who helps to that to come into being. Those are as the main channels, and it felt like in your work that the compassionate channel of kindness is the deep channel.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting. Well, I appreciate that, first of all. I think, even in my graduate study, my focus was on how classrooms can incorporate multicultural, what then at that point was called multicultural perspectives and issues of difference, so that we can better understand and navigate and appreciate one another's strengths in our communities, and in our classrooms. So that's always been both a scholarly interest from mine, but also just a personal interest of mine. How do we use writing to understand ourselves, to relate to the world, to revise our understanding of ourselves, to learn from our experiences, and to relearn at different stages in our lives what our values are and how we name them. So, autobiographical writing has always been a source of that type of inquiry for me, and getting to teach those types of classes is just generative for me to learn from my students' experiences. It helps me think. I always write with my students, so we're always sharing our stories collectively and learning from one another. And I think that's where true education lies, in that relationship building in a classroom. And for me, it happens through writing and reading.
I just thought of a channel of playfulness and writing. I met a doctoral student by the name of Serenity Doherty, and this was at Duffy's on Monday night, and it was starting at about 10, where comedians took the stage, amateur comedians, open mic comedy, and in conversation with Serenity, she was the MC kind of person for this, and she shared. she talked the English department into letting her teach a comedy writing course and
No, yeah.
has the people in the comedy world mentor the students in their comedy writing. And it feels like it's integrating that playful and the generative and
Hmm.
the some of the comedians they I'm talking to them, they're like, yeah, I've audited the class so many times, like I love it. And it's
Yeah.
they come from Omaha
Wow.
for this event. Like
Yeah.
the social health of this community is like extremely meaningful for them on the inside and humorous for us as the audience. So
Yeah, that's wonderful.
I love the generative dimension that your work emphasizes there in that realm. You are I have seen interested in I would what I would call kind of a pragmatic approach to the world of higher education. Like, is our teaching effective? And I think I
Hmm.
saw a
Hmm.
model of assessment about that.
Yep.
Then with the are we successful in creating a culture in a education institution that is conducive to people who may not have a great track record of degree attainment to be engaged in that path?
Hmm. Hmm.
And can we
Yeah,
measure
for
it?
sure. I mean, I was a first generation student myself. I attended college on Pell Grants and which are designed for low income students and federal work study. And so, but I've seen the power of education on my siblings and then the trajectory. I was the second oldest of 18 grandchildren on one side of the family. I was the 22nd grandchild on another side, and I was the first to get a degree. And
Mm,
those who've come after me have gotten degrees, and now their children have gotten degrees. I've seen the power of social mobility for higher education. So for me, it's an ethical imperative that we need to figure out how do we create institutions that can invite more students in to be successful and to help sponsor that social mobility in their own lives for them and their families and their communities. So for me, yeah, that's my passion. That's where all of my work interfaces, whether it's um, teaching or administration or reorganizing a unit or thinking about outcomes. It's always with the question of how is this practice equitable and successful for students? And if it's not, then we should stop doing it and do something else because we have limited resources. So really trying to prioritize what's going to help students thrive and making sure that we're not leaving out populations when we do so.
I love that. That's awesome. That's some good Husker power.
Well,
I
it's
will.
exciting. I do think we're making an impact. I just learned today that our 6-year graduation rate hit an all-time high. And so I do think that when we focus on students' strengths and help them reflect on how they can own their education, how they can balance their well being, the importance of relationships and engaging with experiences, that they will be successful and that we as an institution are successful. I mean, I think the two are co-determinant. Like, we can't consider ourselves a research university of excellence unless we are graduating our students in equitable ways.
Love it. There's the element of playfulness and leisure that permeates a university as well, whether it's in the classroom or out. Campus rec, playfulness, that class, for example. I know some of the doctoral students I've spoken with are mindful of playfulness in their pedagogy.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
That is, I think, something of a drive that when the threat in our environment is low enough, our sort of play drive takes over. And I think of it as channels of playfulness, of curiosity, creativity,
Mm-hmm.
humor, gameplay, and probably has a million other faces, but those are some of the real deep ones. And with that thread,
Mm-hmm.
maybe if you'd be willing to reflect on playfulness in terms of like outside of the university, in the university,
Mm-hmm.
like maybe the silly or maybe like the you had to get a degree to play well at whatever the thing is, or
Yeah.
how do you
I
experience
It's so funny
playfulness?
that you say that because our Center for Transformative Teaching is having what they're calling the Play-Posium coming up in October for instructors that they will um, think and learn about the power of play in the classroom as a form of pedagogical practice. And so it's a whole day event that's focused on really the generative power of play for knowledge making and engagement with students, engagement with ideas and their curiosity. And so I think play is a really underutilized dimension that we can use for the classroom. And so I'm not always considered the most playful. I tend to be a very type A personality, goals driven. But some of the other things that you were talking about, like campus recreation, I firmly committed to my well-being practice outside of the classroom as being on the Peloton and doing my
Mhm.
strengths workouts and gaming and I think that it's important for students to understand and make space for the power of play in their lives, not just as an escape from learning, but as a tool for learning, that it fuels when they've taking their yoga class or they're self-regulating through exercise, that accelerates their learning. It doesn't detract from it. It's not deterring from it. And so I think it's helpful for students to understand that well-being is part of owning their education, helping them define their purpose, and engaging with others and building relationships and building communities that are just as important as those that are within the classroom.
Love it. In part of what you said, I think the sense of purpose, insofar as the envisioning of it takes place on the stage of the imagination, that portion of purpose to me feels like some sort of mental playfulness. The
Mm-hmm.
living it out, especially if you choose those compassionate endeavors for where your purpose points you towards, that living it out may not involve a whole lot of playfulness, might have a lot of suffering involved, but that
Yeah,
meaningful suffering. But there's the cultivating the celebration and playful spirit, like go into rallies around different causes, or the ones that
mm-hmm,
really feel like they have the transformative energy are both very serious and very playful, like at the same time. It's
for
like
sure. Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
attitude towards our own education, like this is serious, like my finding a livelihood may depend on this.
Mm-hmm,
And I think for some of those like general eds, that one way to think about them is these potentially could be lifelong intellectual hobbies where I find joy in learning. And
for
like
sure.
that's, instead of like, oh, I have to take this, like
Right.
this is a well-being intervention opportunity.
Yeah.
So
Yes. Yeah, I know when I was an undergraduate, I took a literature course, and the final paper, we had to find a quote from every text that we'd read. I think there were like 30 of them. And we had to find a quote that resonated with us and why and what it taught us or how we helped think about it. It was such a powerful experience to dive back into all these texts, but then also to try to identify how did it relate to me and what did it have to teach me as a reader at that point in my life was very powerful. So it was both fun and um, it pulled on your imagination and really took you outside the comfort zone to think beyond.
I love that. Now, not to put you on the spot, but do you remember the quote? And if not, do you remember the experience of the themes within the quote that struck you?
Oh, no, I don't remember. It's been way, way too long. I think that was 1986.
Gotcha.
There are many
Yeah.
quotes that are valuable to me, but I can't
Kind
I
of,
can't think of the one from literature.
yeah. Then it kind of reminds me, maybe they're kind of like the Coens in an Eastern tradition where there's this like puzzling statement and I think they kind of fire the imagination, and maybe that's a good way to think
Yeah,
about
yeah,
quotes too.
for sure. Yeah.
I like Don Clifton's quote, "What if we study what's right with people?"
Yep. Yeah.
Like,
Exactly.
by studying failure, we may not learn about success.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, I do. I mean, there was a commission that I was part of as part of a national board that I was on, the Boyer Commission, called the Equity Excellence Imperative. And the opening quote for that collection of recommendations is that excellence without equity is merely privilege reproducing privilege, and equity without excellence is unfulfilled promise. And I think that quote really hit me. It's a good descriptor of my value system and my beliefs about why we need to transform our institution to support all students, regardless of their demographic identity, regardless of what communities they come from, um, and also provide them that transformative education that represents the excellence that we want for every student.
That is a beautiful quote. Thank you.
Mhm.
Now you mentioned type A earlier, and I'm seeing some A's in your strengths, in your top strengths here, and they are learner, achiever, input, discipline, and arranger. Thank you so much
Mhm.
for sharing those strengths. How do you
Yeah,
see
sure.
those playing out through the work that you do?
Yeah, great question. Well, learner is my top strength, which is not surprising. I'm a faculty member, and I think many of our faculty have that as their top strength because, that's just sort of who I am. As soon as I find a topic, I want to dive into it, learn as much as I can, understand the context for it. Um, Achiever, I am a competitive person. Like, I want our university to be the best. I want all of our students to achieve. And then input, I think as I oversee 12 directors of, different units, really trying to understand how all of us collectively can bring our strengths to these initiatives and really, especially the student experience. How do we center our university from a student perspective instead of a faculty perspective, or both and, right? It shouldn't only rely on a faculty perspective or a staff perspective, but how can the students' experience be central to how we think about and how we learn from and how we organize and operationalize what we do. So those are some of the things. I think discipline is just that's sort of my working class background. Like, you get up early, you put in the work, you should, I think that's, um, it goes to my workout routine. It goes to everything. Like, I am very ordered in how I do things and repetition and just sort of goes back to Aristotle, right? It's the doing, right? Where
Mm.
excellence happens, not in the planning, not in the thinking about it, but just do it and get it done. um, so those are some of the ways that I see my strengths operating as a senior associate vice chancellor, but also in my personal life.
Love it. This may be a little bit of a stretch, and I want to just ask about the future in general, but
Hmm.
sort of a kind of a well, I'll just kind of say it. So the
Hmm.
way in which you practice mindfulness about the culture within the university, I have this sense that universities and colleges and institutions of higher education, especially the ones that have both, you know, intentionality about teaching excellence and in research,
Hmm.
it feels like the university itself can be a generative agent in community and be the thing that has a relationship with the community, maybe that's mutually reinforcing. Maybe the community and the university are becoming best friends, and the primary channel of connectedness with each other might be we bring out the best in each other.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, the University of Nebraska is a land grant institution from the Morrill Act. So even from its inception, it was designed to be a place where Nebraskans, and at that time, Nebraska farmer, the trades could learn through liberal arts, but also the practicing of their professions and then give back to the communities. So I think that's what in its ideal version, that's what our university was designed to do, right? To lift up people, to give back to their communities. And I think that's what our extension offices do across the state of Nebraska. It's taking our research and translating it for farmers and ranchers and early child educators so that they can give back and sustain our farms, sustain our children, our educational systems. I think that's the best version of a university, in my opinion. Of a university, that's the difference between like a private liberal arts college and a land grant university. Our mission is twofold: education, but research designed to help solve problems and improve people's lives and improve our society. So
Mm.
at our best, I think we do that.
You've got me interested now in the history of the Land Grant Act and if there was a primary person or group of people that crafted the vision that became that we're now experiencing to this day.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I, in its most ideal positive framework, right? It's designed to empower you. We were given land to create a university in every state that is specifically designed to lift up the members of that state. Now, there's also the negative reading, right? The land, whose land is it that we're
Yeah.
using and taking away from others in order to create these universities? So, from its inception, it's a complex and contradictory vision for who gets to benefit from the university and who doesn't. And I think that's a recognition that is increasingly we are called to address. And for instance, as we were talking about the Genoa Indian School, I think Margaret Jacobs in our history department is leading a reconciliation project for the Genoa Indian School and digital archives in community with the native tribes that were displaced and that were adversely impacted by their experiences at the school. So I think it's always a twofold moment of thinking about whose history are we celebrating and whose version of the university is ideal and who are the students who are benefiting from the university experience and which communities are and aren't benefiting. So that's something that we as an institution always have to think about and work proactively to address.
We can empty the cup of misery and fill the cup of life
Yeah.
to the full. I think that you've really expressed some directionality that goes into the future, but are there any other particulars that you would like to see happen in your work in the work of the university? What does
Mhm.
the future, what would you like the future to hold?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think right now, nationally, we're sort of questioning, people are questioning the value of even attending colleges and universities and asking what's the return on the investment. And that question is especially important for a public research university because that relies on funding from our state legislature. So until we can answer that question compellingly, I think we're going to face, budget cuts or at the very least distrust from our communities rather than building bridges and understanding and showcasing the stories of the students who are amazing, and and the faculty who are doing these wonderful things. So that's something I think about and worry about. Like, what is this institution going to be in 2042, which is when my grandson hopefully will be a Husker, a freshman. And so I'm interested, I'm focused, laser focused on getting students this year to graduation, but I'm also thinking in the long term, what is this, how do my actions build a university that's going to be sustainable and powerful and valuable for the communities long after I'm gone? And hopefully I won't be gone by 2042 because I want to see him enter as a Husker. But I think that's a question that every administrator should be asking. Every faculty member should be asking, right? That's what is the legacy of our institution that we are creating for future generations? And how can we do a better job of that so that this institution is giving back to those communities long after we're gone?
Thank you. And is there anything else that maybe has come to mind or that you've been thinking about lately that we haven't discussed that you would care to share about? Or if people want to learn more about any of these things that we've discussed, what else would you like to share about and how do we learn more?
Yeah, well, I'm really appreciate this conversation. It's fun. I love thinking these big thoughts around how we can do a better job of improving our institution and improving our students' experiences. If people want to learn about the Power framework, they can go to Husker Student Power on our website, and it describes a little bit about the elements. This next week, the September 15th, is when we're kicking off Husker Student Power Week. So it's a whole week of activities for our students to really energize them. And we have a survey that we use with our first year and transfer students to really understand how it's going for them in their fourth week of the semester and how we can help support them with resources and information that they may not have found yet. So that's exciting to me, but I just feel honored and blessed to be in this position to have an opportunity to do what I love to do every day. And I hope that it continues to have an impact for my students.
Thank you so much for being on the show, Amy.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for asking me.